Today we're going to examine the correlation between speed and sleep, or sleep and athletic performance. I'm going to include some studies in the description which support the correlation between getting adequate levels of sleep and athletic performance, or disruptions or constraints on sleep, and how that adversely affects athletic performance. What happens during sleep? Well, the first thing is CNS recovery. Now, sprinting is a CNS dominant activity. So things such as motor recruitment, coordination, and reaction time occur during, or that effect occurs during sleep. The next thing that occurs during sleep is muscle recovery, collagen repair, and power output. So things such as force production, growth hormone peaking, protein synthesis, melatonin repair, and neuroadaptations occur during sleep. The next thing that occurs during sleep is hormonal regulation. So things such as testosterone, cortisol, and IGF-1 or insulin producing growth factor. The next thing that occurs during sleep is that inflammation is reduced and immune function is enhanced. So this basically has an impact on injury risk, because to train consistently we need to reduce the risk of injuries. So if sleep is adversely affected, constrained in any way, sleep is disrupted, all of these factors are adversely affected. And so it can affect things such as motor learning, which would be positions in the blocks, positions in acceleration, positions at max velocity. It can affect reaction time coming out of the blocks, can affect power output during acceleration or during the max velocity phase, and then also adversely affecting the risk of injuries, which again affects the ability to train consistently and have or produce adaptations over time. So sleep is very important. What are some good habits when it comes to sleeping? Well, the first thing, you want to have a consistent time as far as when you go to bed on a nightly basis, and this would include even on the weekends. You want to have a relatively cool room, kind of in the ballpark of 65 degrees. You want to reduce your exposure to bright screens at least an hour before bedtime. Try to avoid eating large meals, consuming alcohol, or even caffeine late at night. And then in the mornings, you want to get exposure to sunlight. So for those who are interested, without recommending a specific device, there are actually wearables that you can use to actually track your sleep, and many of them will produce what's called a sleep score. Now, some of the metrics to look for would be total sleep time, sleep efficiency, the amount of deep sleep, the amount of REM sleep, your resting heart rate, your heart rate variability, your respiration, and then also just your consistency of sleep across days and weeks. So how do we determine if we're getting enough sleep? So the general population recommendation might be kind of 7.5 to 9 hours. Obviously, athletes are going to need a little more sleep than the average individual, so it might kind of push us on that further end. It's normal to use an alarm to get up to get to work and so forth, but if you're very sluggish in the morning after waking to an alarm, if you're not alert, if you're kind of struggling through a training session, that's an indication you're not getting enough sleep. If on weekends you turn the alarm off and you're sleeping 2 hours later than your normal time, that's a good indication you're not getting enough sleep. On the other hand, if you're alert shortly after the alarm goes off, if you wake up at the same time on weekends as you do during the week without the alarm, that's a good sign that you are getting enough sleep, regardless of the number of hours that entails. Now, understandably, a lot of individuals have work, family, and business needs that may kind of put some constraints on the ability to get consistent or an adequate amount of sleep. So then the question is, well, how do we adjust for that? So if due to various factors, on a particular night, you're not able to get, at least 6 hours of sleep, and obviously the recommendation is much more than 6 hours, but certainly if you're going under 6 hours in a night, and if you have a training session the next day, the recommendation would be to kind of adjust the number of sessions you're having, adjust the number of intervals you're having, your training volume, or the intensity, because if you don't, then you're opening yourself up to higher injury risk. Now, adults a lot of times will wake up in the middle of the night, have to go to the restroom. What I would encourage you to not do, though, during those restroom breaks is checking your devices, because when you do that, it just can disrupt your circadian rhythm, postpone REM sleep, affect melatonin levels, and just kind of be a disaster for the next morning. So, you know, avoid the devices, go to the restroom, go back to bed, and you'll feel a lot better the next day. Not necessarily recommending it as a supplementation or as a substitute, but naps can actually benefit. You know, if they're done in, say, like on a weekend nap in the afternoon, can be a nice supplementation to a minor sleep deficit. But again, that's not really an option during weekdays if you have work obligations. So in summary, hopefully I've covered some of the impacts of sleep. Again, sleep is kind of like a legal PED when it comes to athletic performance. I'm going to include some of the some studies in the description of how sleep affects athletic performance, and so sleep is not something to underestimate or take for granted. It is something that we need as athletes, and just as humans in general. There's a reason that we have to have sleep. So do not neglect sleep, but understandably, we all have lives outside of track and field, and so you know, there are some limits there, but at least, yeah, you can maybe limit your TV time and so forth to kind of compensate. So till next video.